Gospel music has witnessed moments that define generations, but there are rare occasions when time itself seems to bow in reverence, when sound becomes sacred memory and worship turns into testimony. And the tribute honoring the legendary Richard Smallwood was one of those moments, an atmosphere so heavy with spiritual weight that even the air inside the sanctuary felt different, as if heaven itself had drawn near, because everyone present understood they were not attending an ordinary service or witnessing a routine acknowledgement, but standing inside a living chapter of gospel history, honoring a man whose obedience, discipline, and unwavering commitment to God reshaped the very foundation of modern gospel music. And as the service began with prayer and the slow, reverent hum of the organ filled the room, hearts across the sanctuary began reflecting on how Smallwood's music had walked with them through the most defining moments of their lives, through funerals where grief felt unbearable, through hospital rooms where hope felt distant, through quiet nights when faith was tested and his songs became prayers when words failed. And as the program unfolded deliberately, without hurry or spectacle, testimony after testimony rose from choir directors, pastors, musicians, and worship leaders who spoke not just about Richard Smallwood the composer, but Richard Smallwood the servant, the teacher, the standard bearer, a man whose music demanded preparation, discipline, humility, and reverence, because his compositions were never meant to be rushed or performed casually, but approached with respect, patience, and spiritual understanding. And as stories continued to pour out, memories surfaced of long rehearsals where singers learned endurance, of moments where voices cracked, not from weakness, but from growth, of choirs discovering that excellence was not about perfection, but about honoring God with their very best. And as the congregation listened, it became increasingly clear that Smallwood's greatest legacy was not simply the notes he wrote, but the mindset he instilled, that gospel music is ministry first, worship always, and performance never the priority. And when Tamala Mann rose to deliver her tribute, the room shifted in an instant, because her presence alone carried generations of gratitude, her voice steady, but filled with emotion as she spoke about encountering Smallwood's music early in her journey, how it stretched her faith, challenged her patience, and reshaped her understanding of worship, explaining that singing his songs required surrender, trust, and spiritual maturity, because they were written not to showcase talent, but to reveal truth. And as she continued speaking, her words resonated deeply with every singer in the room who had ever struggled through his harmonies and emerged stronger, every musician who had ever learned restraint through his arrangements, and every believer who had ever found comfort in his lyrics. And when Tamala finally began to sing, the sanctuary seemed to exhale collectively, as her voice rose slowly, intentionally, allowing space for memory, healing, and reflection, each note carrying layers of gratitude, reverence, and testimony, as faces across the room reflected the depth of the moment, some openly weeping, others standing with hands lifted, many closing their eyes as if revisiting moments when Smallwood's music carried them through storms they never thought they would survive. And as choirs joined her, voices blending across generations, the sound transformed into something greater than music, becoming a living testimony of how one man's obedience could shape decades of worship. And as the tribute continued, pastors stepped forward to speak about Smallwood's unwavering integrity, emphasizing that his insistence on excellence was never about ego, but about honoring God with preparation and intentionality, reminding the congregation that worship is a sacred responsibility, not a casual offering. And as more testimonies followed, from musicians who learned patience through his scores, from worship leaders who learned humility through his standards, from everyday believers whose faith was strengthened through his songs, the service evolved into a spiritual archive, preserving the impact of a legacy that cannot be summarized in minutes or reduced to accolades. And throughout the hour, silence was given space to breathe, because some truths require stillness, some moments require reflection, and some legacies are too profound to rush. And as Tamala Mann returned once more to the microphone for the closing moments of her tribute, she allowed the final notes to linger, understanding that endings matter, that silence can speak louder than sound. And when the last chord faded and the sanctuary stood still, applause did not come immediately, because no response felt adequate for what had been experienced. And in that quiet, hearts were full, spirits were stirred, and one undeniable settled deeply into every soul present, that Richard Smallwood's legacy is not confined to sheet music or recordings, but lives on in every choir rehearsal, every worship service, every moment when faith feels fragile and music becomes prayer. And through this stunning tribute, through the voices lifted, the tears shed, the memories shared, and the worship offered, the world was reminded that gospel legends do not fade with time. They echo through generations, shaping faith, strengthening worship, and calling future voices to honor God with excellence, reverence, and unwavering devotion.